In the year 2467, humanity had spread across the stars, establishing colonies on countless planets. From the shining cityscapes of Mars to the thriving research facilities on Europa, humans were proud of their achievements. But among them, there was always a sense that the universe was vast and dangerous. With threats lurking beyond the stars, on the distant colony planet Solara, humanity had made its last stand. The Krytar, a ruthless alien species, had arrived without warning. They were a terrifying race with advanced weaponry and an unmatched thirst for conquest. Solara was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where humans could regroup and find peace. But it had become ground zero for the greatest battle in human history. Captain Arya Connell stood at the front of her team, watching the horizon darken as a new storm approached. It wasn't a typical storm. This was no natural phenomenon. The Krytar were coming. Their ships filled the sky like ominous shadows, and the once peaceful world of Solara was about to burn. Arya was a strong and determined leader. A former soldier of the United Federation of Earth, she had seen the horrors of war. But Solara was different. This wasn't just about battle tactics or technology. It was about survival. The fate of humanity itself hung in the balance. The Federation's forces on Solara had been defeated in the initial onslaught. It had taken only hours for the Krytar to overwhelm them, using their superior ships and weapons. The remnants of humanity's army had been pushed into the underground cities, where they had made their last stand. Arya's team was part of the elite strike force Delta, tasked with gathering information and securing key resources to help the Federation regroup. But everything had changed the moment Arya discovered the Solara core, hidden beneath the surface of Solara. Deep in the old research facilities was a weapon unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It was a massive, strange structure, glowing with an eerie blue light. The core, as it was called, was the work of an ancient civilization. It had been abandoned centuries ago, but Arya believed it could be humanity's salvation. However, there was a problem. The Krytar were closing in, and they knew about the core. They had been hunting it ever since their invasion began. Arya and her team had to make a decision: activate the core and risk it falling into the hands of the Krytar, or destroy it and leave humanity's fate to chance. As the battle raged outside, Arya made her decision. They would activate the core. Inside the underground research facility, the walls hummed with the core's energy. Arya knelt beside a control panel, her fingers flying over the buttons. Her heart pounded in her chest. She knew the risk if something went wrong. It could destroy everything. But the alternative was to sit back and watch humanity fall. "Captain, need to hurry," said Lieutenant Jace Harper, her second in command. He stood near the doorway, watching for any sign of the Krytar. Arya nodded, focusing on the screen in front of her. A countdown had begun, the core's energy building with each passing second. Suddenly, the facility's alarms blared. The Krytar had found them. "Get ready," Arya shouted. "We don't have much time." Just as she activated the final sequence, the ground shook violently. The core had begun to awaken, its power pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. The walls of the facility cracked, and a bright light filled the room. It was as if the entire planet was responding to the energy being released. "Captain, we need to move," Jace urged, his voice tense. But Arya stood still, her eyes wide with awe. The core was more than just a weapon, it was a force of nature. Its power was beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The moment the light reached its peak, the facility's doors exploded open. The Krytar had arrived. Arya's team scrambled to their feet, weapons ready. The Krytar soldiers poured into the room, their alien forms massive and imposing. They had the advantage: advanced armor, superior strength, and weapons that could cut through steel. But they were not prepared for what the Solara core had done. A surge of energy shot out from the core, enveloping Arya and her team. The Krytar soldiers hesitated, confused by the sudden change in the air. Then it happened. The energy from the core flowed into the humans, enhancing their bodies, sharpening their senses, and flooding their minds with strength and power. Arya felt it first. A rush of energy filled her veins, her muscles tightening, her thoughts becoming clearer. It was as if the entire universe had suddenly become connected to her. She could feel the Krytar soldiers' movements before they even made a move. "Captain, what's happening?" Jace gasped, his eyes wide as he looked at his hands. His body was changing, his physical abilities amplified by the core's energy. "It's the core," Arya said, her voice steady. "It's giving us the power to fight back," Krytar, now realizing the danger, roared in anger. Their leader, a tall and menacing figure with glowing red eyes, raised a weapon that crackled with energy. "You cannot defeat us," he hissed, his voice like ice. "The Krytar are invincible." But Arya wasn't afraid. She was no longer just a soldier. She had become something more, something human, but empowered by an ancient force. With a sharp movement, Arya dashed toward the Krytar leader, her body moving faster than ever before. Her new strength allowed her to dodge the Krytar's deadly energy blasts with ease. In an instant, she closed the distance between them and struck. Her fist collided with the Krytar leader's armor with such force that he was thrown back. Crashing into a wall, Jace followed suit, taking down Krytar soldiers left and right, his movements swift and precise. The rest of Arya's team was similarly enhanced, each of them now capable of feats beyond human strength. The Krytar were not invincible. They were powerful, but they were not prepared for what humanity could become when pushed to the brink, as Arya and her team fought. The battle in the facility raged on. The Krytar leader, now enraged, advanced on Arya, his weapon crackling with deadly energy. But Arya was ready. "You're wrong," she said calmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We are not weak. We are human, and we will not go down without a fight." With a final powerful strike, Arya destroyed the Krytar leader's weapon. The rest of the Krytar soldiers, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat. Arya stood victorious, her body still humming with the power of the Solara core. Her team was battered, but they were alive, and they had proven that humanity could fight back. They were not just survivors, they were warriors. The Krytar had underestimated them, but the battle was far from over. The core's energy was spreading, and with it, a new chapter in humanity's history was about to begin. The underground facility was in chaos. The rumbling of the Solara core's energy echoed through the halls. As the power of the core surged into every corner of the facility, Arya Connell, standing tall in the center of it all, felt the energy thrumming inside her body. It was overwhelming, but it was also empowering. Every muscle in her body was alive with strength, every thought sharp as a blade. She wiped a streak of blood from her cheek, the battle having left its mark on her. But she was far from finished. "Captain, they're retreating," Lieutenant Jace Harper said, his voice strained as he held off a group of Krytar soldiers. His once human body now moved with an unnatural speed, his reflexes enhanced beyond anything he had ever imagined. He barely needed to think anymore, his body acted before his mind could catch up. The Kree. Tar had underestimated the core's power, but they were not weak. They were dangerous, and they had adapted quickly. "We can't let them regroup," Arya said, her voice firm. "We need to press forward before they call for reinforcements." Jace nodded, his enhanced senses already detecting movement in the hallway behind them. "There's a group coming. Fast." Arya turned her attention to the other members of her team. Each of them had been affected by the core's power. Sergeant Tara Mason, once a skilled sharpshooter, now had eyes like a hawk. She could see the smallest movements, the tiniest shift in the air, making her a deadly force in combat. Corporal Ian Beck, a former engineer, now had the strength of 10 men. He tore through enemy armor with his bare hands, his powerful blows crushing the Krytar's defenses. But despite the newfound abilities, there was still fear. The Krytar were relentless. Their leader, a towering figure named Zorkon, had not given up. He was not one to retreat so easily. The longer they fought, the more Arya knew that this was not just a battle for survival. It was a battle for the future of humanity. "Move out," Arya shouted, taking the lead as her team moved quickly through the facility's maze of corridors. The Krytar forces were scattering, but they weren't defeated. Not yet. Zorkon had one final plan, a weapon, so devastating that it could destroy not just the Solara core, but everything around it. As they neared the central chamber, Arya's enhanced senses kicked in. She felt the shift in the air, a growing presence. He was preparing for one last strike. The group stopped at the entrance to the chamber, a massive door reinforced with steel. The core was beyond this point, and Zorkon was waiting. Captain Jace whispered, "The Krytar leader is in there, his weapons powering up. We need to be quick." Arya nodded. Her mind raced, calculating their next move. She could feel the power of the core flowing through her, ready to be unleashed, but she had to stay focused. If they didn't act fast, the Krytar would gain control of the core, and humanity's hope would be lost. "Everyone stay close," Arya ordered. "We strike together. No one falls behind." With synchronized movements, they broke through the doors. Inside, the Solara core pulsed with energy, glowing brighter than ever before. At the far side of the room stood Zorkon, surrounded by his elite soldiers. The Krytar leader raised his weapon, a towering cannon designed to drain the core's energy. "You are fools to think you can defeat me, humans," Zorkon boomed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "This core belongs to the Krytar. We will harness its power and use it to crush your colonies." Arya felt a surge of anger. She had seen enough destruction, enough loss. The core was humanity's only chance, and she would not let it fall into the hands of the Krytar. "We're not done yet, Zorkon," she shouted back, her voice unwavering. "You'll never have this core." The Krytar soldiers closed in, their weapons aimed at the humans. But the humans were no longer weak, no longer just survivors. Arya could feel it in her blood, the power coursing through her. She knew she had to act fast, before Zorkon's weapon drained the core entirely. "Move," she shouted, her team charging forward with ferocity. In an instant, Arya was in the air, leaping over a Krytar soldier and landing behind Zorkon. She grabbed his weapon, twisting it from his grip with ease. He swung at her. But she dodged effortlessly, her movements far quicker than any normal human could achieve. Jace and the rest of the team were right behind her, pushing forward to clear the way. Terra's sharpshooting skills took down the Krytar soldiers from a distance, her enhanced vision allowing her to pinpoint weak points in their armor. Eon's brute strength sent Krytar soldiers flying with every punch. It was like watching a symphony of destruction, but Zorkon wasn't going down easily. He was fast, his strength unmatched. He lunged at Arya, his claws outstretched, aiming for her throat. But Arya was faster. She ducked, using his own momentum against him, and shoved him toward the core. With a roar of fury, Zorkon stumbled, but before he could recover, Arya grabbed the Krytar leader by the shoulders, her newfound strength easily overpowering him. She slammed him into the floor, pinning him down with her knee. "You are finished," she said, her voice cold. "Humanity will never fall to you." Zorkon snarled, his eyes glowing red with rage. "You cannot win. We are the Krytar. We have defeated countless species, and we will crush you." But Arya was determined. She had been given the power of the core, and she was not about to let it slip through her fingers. With one final push, Arya raised her fist, ready to finish the Krytar leader. But as she did, something strange happened. The energy from the core surged around her, wrapping her in a brilliant light. "No," Zorkon screamed. "This power is ours." The core was reacting to Arya. The energy was flowing through her into her very being. It was as if the core itself had recognized her, chosen her. And with that, a wave of power erupted. From her, sending the Krytar soldiers flying and throwing Zorkon back against the wall, the room shook, the core's energy pulsing wildly. Arya stumbled, but she stood strong. She could feel the power, but she also knew they needed to contain it. The Krytar's weapon was still operational, and if they didn't stop it, it would destroy everything. "Ian Beck, get to the weapon," Arya shouted. "Shut it down before it's too late." Ian nodded, sprinting toward the Krytar cannon. His enhanced strength allowed him to tear through the machinery, pulling apart the complex systems. Sparks flew as he worked, but time was running out. Arya turned back to Zorkon, who was getting up slowly, his eyes burning with hatred. "You think you've won? The Krytar never stop? We'll return, and when we do, your entire species will bow before us." Arya stepped forward, unafraid. "We'll be ready." As the Krytar leader retreated, Ian successfully disabled the weapon. Solara Core's energy surged once again, stabilizing. Arya and her team stood victorious, but they knew this was just the beginning. The Krytar might retreat, but they would never stop hunting humanity. The fight for survival had only just begun. The Solara Core's energy had stabilized, but the fight was far from over. Arya Connell stood at the center of the control room, her body still crackling with the residual power from the core. Her team gathered around her, eyes wide with awe and fear. They had just defeated Zorkon, but they knew the Krytar were not finished. Their invasion was only beginning. Arya took a deep breath. The surge of power was intoxicating, but it was also dangerous. She could feel the energy inside, her pulsing, alive, as if it was part of her very being. The Solara Core had awakened something within her, and now she had to control it. If she didn't, it might consume her. "We've won this battle," Arya said, her voice steady, despite the chaos around them. "But we haven't won the war. The Krytar will come back with more ships, more soldiers. We need to prepare." Lieutenant Jace Harper nodded. His face was bruised, but his eyes were sharp. "We'll need every weapon we can find. But the core, it's too powerful. If we use it too much, we might lose control." Arya looked at him. "I know, but it's our only chance. We can't let them take it. We need to make sure the Krytar never get their hands on this." "Captain," Sergeant Tara Mason said, stepping forward. "There's something strange. I've been monitoring Krytar communications. They're sending a distress signal. Something's coming bigger than anything we've faced before." Arya frowned. The Solara system had already been on high alert. She couldn't imagine what else the Krytar had hidden up their sleeves. The core was powerful, but it might not be enough to face the full force of the enemy. Time was running out. "We need to fortify this position," Arya said. "Prepare for a full-scale assault." Hours later, the sky above Solara was darker than ever before. The Krytar had been silent for a few hours after their defeat. But Arya knew that silence was only temporary. She could feel the tension in the air, the feeling of an approaching storm. The core's energy hummed deep in the ground, a reminder of the power humanity had unlocked, but it also felt like a ticking time. Bombdotter's team was busy preparing for the coming assault. Weapons were loaded, defenses were set, and the underground bunkers were reinforced. Arya stood outside, her gaze fixed on the sky. The stars were distant, but the deep hum of the core filled her senses, constant reminder that everything could change in an instant. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. "Captain, look," Jace shouted, pointing to the sky. A massive Krytar ship appeared out of the atmosphere, its size dwarfing everything that had come before. It was a warship, dark and imposing, surrounded by smaller vessels that darted like shadows. "Impossible," Tara whispered, eyes wide with shock. "They must have brought everything they had." Maria's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. The final test. The Krytar had brought their full force, and the fate of humanity rested on this battle. "All teams take positions," Arya barked. "We fight for Solara and for all of humanity." The Krytar warship descended toward the surface, its guns already firing. The blast shook the ground, and explosions rang out as the ships began their assault. Arya and her team rushed to their weapons, prepared to defend the core and everything they had worked for. But this time it was different. As the Krytar ships closed in, the energy from the Solara core began to pulse wildly. The power that had once been a tool for defense was now spiraling out of control. Arya felt it in her bones. The core was responding to the threat, its energy spiking higher and higher. "Captain, it's going to blow." Ian Beck shouted, panic in his voice. "We have to shut it down now." But Arya knew it was too late. The core was no longer just a weapon. It had become part of the planet itself, part of humanity's very existence. Shutting it down could be catastrophic. The Krytar had pushed Solara too far, and now the core was ready to unleash its true power. "We fight," Arya shouted, even as the ground shook beneath them. "We fight with everything we have." The first wave of Krytar soldiers descended from their ships. They were larger, stronger, and faster than before, enhanced by the core energy in the same way Arya and her team had been. But humanity was no longer afraid. Arya felt the power surge through her, her strength doubling with every passing second. She moved faster than she ever had before, dodging enemy fire and taking down Kryder soldiers one after another. Jace, Tara, Ian, and the rest of the team were right behind her. Working in perfect synchronization, the Krytar had underestimated humanity's resolve. The humans fought with the fury of a species that had been pushed to the edge, had discovered an unbreakable will to survive. But then the core's energy spiked again. And this time, it wasn't just the soldiers who felt its effects. The planet itself began to react. The sky above began to glow with strange, brilliant lights. The ground cracked open, and vast chasms spread across the surface of Solara. The Solara core, once a source of power, was now threatening to tear the planet apart. Arya gritted her teeth. They had to finish this before Solara was lost. Jace, Tara, Ian. Arya called. We need to push forward. We have to destroy that warship, or it's all over. They nodded, and together they sprinted toward the heart of the Krytar assault, pushing through the chaos. The Krytar warship loomed ahead, its weapons firing relentlessly. They had one chance to end this. As they neared the ship, Zorkon's voice echoed in their minds. He was still alive, still broadcasting a final message to his forces. You cannot win, humans. Zorkon's voice boomed. We are the Krytar. We are the conquerors of the universe. Arya felt the heat of anger burn in her chest. Not today, Zorkon, she muttered. They reached the base of the Krytar warship, and Ian wasted no time. His enhanced strength allowed him to tear into the ship's outer shell with his bare hands, exposing the inner workings. Tara moved swiftly, taking out any Krytar soldiers who tried to stop them. Arya reached the control center, where the final defense mechanism was located. She had one last move to make. The core's energy was building to a critical point, and she could feel it calling to her. I'm going to finish this, she said to Jace, who was watching her carefully. You need to get back. The core. I don't know what will happen if I do this. Jace hesitated, but then nodded. We trust you, Captain. With a deep breath, Arya activated the Solara core's final sequence. The energy within her and the core fused, and a powerful wave of force surged outward. Engulfing the Krytar warship in a blinding explosion of light, the ship was destroyed. The Krytar were defeated, but the cost was high. Arya collapsed to the ground, the energy fading from her body. She could feel the power leaving her, but the mission was complete. Humanity had won.